Hello, in this lecture we're going to talk about the production possibility frontier. Production possibility frontier being a simplified model, a model that demonstrates some concepts that will be very important and we'll see throughout the study of economics. Like any scientific model, the goal of this model is to eliminate a lot of factors so that we can see the few factors and see the interplay of these few factors and determine what is happening in this simplified world. In scientific experience, we of course can bring things into the lab and eliminate a lot of factors. When we do economics, we often have to rely on thought processes. So we're going to look at a thought process, we're going to eliminate a lot of factors, and then go through a thought process through these smaller models to see if it could tell us something true about the world. We will first start off with a very simplified economic model in which we only have one individual in the economy. This is person A, and there's only two things that person A can produce. We can produce fish and firewood. So by bringing the economic model down to one individual and just 2 units of output, we're basically eliminating currency. They can either produce fish or firewood or some combination of the two. If they spent all day, if person A spent all day catching fish, we can get 10 fish total, but we would have no firewood to cook the fish with. Or we can get 6 units of firewood and have no fish to cook on the fire, but we can have a nice big fire in that case, which would be nice. So if we can then go from 10 fish to 9 fish, then we're going to say we can have 0.6 units of firewood. So we can have a small fire and we can have our 9 pile of fish and try to cook them somewhat on the fire. We can get 8 fish and we have 1.2 units of firewood, 7 fish and 1.8 units of firewood, and so on through our possibilities here. Now, what this is telling us is giving us an idea of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means that there's still a cost here, even in this simplified market. So there's always going to be a cost. That's going to be the idea of opportunity cost. Even if we remove money, we still have the idea of opportunity cost. What is the opportunity cost for 1 unit of fish? Well, if we go from 0 fish to 1 fish, we went from 6 firewood down to 5.4 firewood, or it's 0.6 units of firewood. So if we go 1 more unit, we want 2 fish, then we have to give up another 0.6. Notice we're talking about the marginal cost here in this case, meaning we're going from this unit to this unit. We're always making decisions on the margin. Each new unit of fish costing us 0.6 in firewood, and so on and so forth. We can also think of opportunity cost going the other way. What's going to be the opportunity cost if we make firewood? If we collect firewood, and then we can go from 0 to 0.6 units of firewood, and that's going to give us an opportunity cost of 1 unit of fish, going from 10 fish down to 9 fish. And then if we wanted to make another unit if we went from 0.6 units to 1.2 units of firewood, we would have to sacrifice 1 more fish, going from 9 fish down to 8 fish. And again, on the margin, we have 1 unit of fish being the cost of each new unit of firewood, the unit of firewood being in terms of 0.6 new units of firewood, and so on and so forth. So then we see the opportunity cost in terms of the thing that we're giving up. That's why nothing is free, not because everything costs money, because there's an opportunity cost to any decision that we make. We can see this graphically in the same way. We can say that we have firewood, 6 units of firewood, no fish, or a maximum of 10 units of fish and no firewood, or anywhere on this straight line. So we're representing a straight line. That's the production possibility frontier. What that tells us is that anywhere on that production possibility frontier, that's where this individual A has been efficient. Anywhere on that frontier is an efficient point for A. Now, it doesn't tell us which point is optimal, which point should A produce at, but it does tell us that all of the resources have been applied efficiently if we're anywhere on this line, this production possibility frontier. If we're anywhere inside it, then in terms of these 2 goods, firewood and fish, we have not been efficient. Maybe we went for a walk around the island or something like that, but we're not efficient in terms of the production of these 2 goods. We could have produced somewhere higher in terms of total production, and anywhere outside here, that's impossible for us to do given this point in time. Now, there could be changes in the future. We'll talk about that, but at this point in time, at this point, there's no way that we can get out to a point outside. Now let's imagine person B is now stranded on the island. Person B is in the island, and we have a production possibility frontier in terms of a table of fish. He can only get 5 fish if he spends all day doing fish, or 5 pieces of firewood if he spends all day doing firewood. If we look at a production possibility frontier, we have the same concept, 5 and 5. So this individual is not as well off, not as well suited for the fish and the firewood production, can't do as much as anywhere along that production possibility frontier. If we compare the two, we can see that person A is better at fishing, person person A is also better at firewood collection. So we say that A has an absolute advantage in both the fishing and the firewood. Person B, not as good as either one of them. So if we were to graph that, we may then ask the question, here's the production possibility for A, here's the production possibility for B. If they were to be separate, is it the case where A might say, hey, you know what, B's not as good at either of these two activities. Maybe A is just better off to go on his own and leave B to go on his own. If we're both looking out for our self-interests, then maybe they would separate. But the idea of the production possibility frontier, the idea of trade and specialization, would say that that may not be the case. For example, if we said that A just picked the amount in the middle, if he was on his own, said I'm just going to do my own thing, we could have 5 fish and 3 firewood. B, if we just picked the middle number, we'd say he's got 3 fish and 2 firewood for a total of 8 fish and 5 firewood. But let's imagine that if they got together and found some way to trade and specialize, then A, let's say, specializes in fish because he has a lower opportunity cost for the fish, would have 10 units of fish, and if B specialized then in firewood, we'd have 5 units of firewood, and we can imagine just by looking at that table that, well, look, we have 10 units of fish and 5 units of firewood. Now, we've got 2 more units of fish just from specialization. Now, of course, that specialization means that we'd have to trade. If they could find some way to specialize and then trade, what that means is both individuals would be better off. For example, if we just did 1 unit at a time, we were here first for A, and then A decides to make 1 more unit of fish, then we're going to trade 1 unit of fish for 0.8 units of firewood. What does that mean? We still have 5 units of fish then, because we had 5 units, then we made 1 more unit, but we traded it, but now we have 3.2 units of firewood. A is better off, even though A is better at both items. B was at 3 and 2, and if B trades, we're going to say 0.8 firewood for 1 fish, then B's at 2.2 firewood and 3 fish. So if we continue this process, of course, we would continue down and get to the specialization of 10 fish and 5 firewood if they can find a way to trade and be the best off. But the concept here is that through specialization and trade, A is consuming outside of A's production possibility frontier, even though A had an absolute advantage in both production possibilities. A was better at fishing and better at firewood, and A's still better off through trading from someone who has not an absolute advantage on either aspect. And B is going to be better off through specializing in trade. So B, even though B is not as good in either of the areas, in either gathering firewood or fishing, he's still useful and he's still able to increase the amount of consumption through specialization and trade. So that's the great thing about specialization and trade. If we put it on one graph, we're going to say A is here, B is here. We're going to, if they specialize to the extreme, meaning we're going to have just production of firewood for B and just the production of fish for A, then they'd be at a point out here. And again, if they can find a way to distribute in such a way that they're both better off, they could be both better off, and that's going to be the great thing. Now, the other great thing about specialization as trade is, what if there's an innovation? What if A then says, I found a better way to fish, I've innovated? What does that do? Well, it was able to produce 10 units of fish and have an opportunity cost for fish being 0.65. If A can now produce 15 units of fish, what does that do to the opportunity cost for fish? It brings it down to 0.4. So now each new unit of fish, because of the innovation, is worth 0.4 units of firewood, which is less, meaning that A would be more likely to trade at a lower cost. We would accept a minimum of 0.4 to produce another unit of fish, as opposed to 0.6 before. In other words, the opportunity cost for A to produce firewood has gone up because of the innovation in fish. It's going to cost more fish for A to then produce firewood than before because A has innovated in fish. What does that mean to B? Even though B has done nothing new, B has stayed the same, B can now say, I want more for my firewood. Why? Because the firewood has a larger value in terms of opportunity cost to A. So once again, through trade, even if one of the individuals who already had the absolute advantage gets better, it still could benefit the other individual involved just through specialization and through trade. These concepts can be applicable to corporations, they can be applicable to individuals, they can be applicable to different countries, and they'll be coming up a lot as we move forward.